welcome back, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of the Shannon Joy Show. I am your guest host, Tiffany Cianci. For the first half of the week, we have had to start a little bit later on Thursday and Friday. We are starting right on time at around 12:15 to 12:30 p.m. I think that's Shannon's usual start time with several guests. But today, I'm coming to you live from Washington, D.C. And thank you guys for letting me come back for day 2, or I guess it's day 3, if you look at the last couple of weeks of me filling in for Shannon. We do have a very, very packed show for you today because there's a lot going on in the world. A lot of things that are out of our control, but have a lot to do with what's going to happen in our world, things with the midterms. And we also have a lot that's going on that we can have a little bit of influence over, and some things that we're already having influence over that you should know you're doing and making a difference with. So with that, let's dive right in. I want to get started today at the top of the hour with a story that was leading up Time Magazine's big review this week. Time Magazine has been a little aloof on the topic that they're covering here, so I was a little surprised to see it today. And Time Magazine ran with a story today about Brad Pascale, he's former Trump campaign manager. And if you could pull up 1A for me, I would super appreciate it, LJ. And so he's a Trump campaign manager who just had a very interesting disclosure come out about him in a FARA registration disclosure. Now, that's a Foreign Agent Registration Act disclosure. And what it said is that the state of Israel is paying this former Trump campaign manager $1.5 million a month to run an information or disinformation campaign that promised to flood social media, Reddit, and the internet writ large with hundreds of pieces of pro-Israel content on a daily and weekly basis, not only to re-influence Americans into support of Israel, but to convince LLMs to create only pro-Israel content when you ask questions about what's happening in the Middle East and what our relationship with Israel is like. Now, I don't want to really focus on the fact that this is specifically an Israel thing. If any country were paying the former campaign manager of a sitting president $1.5 million a month to create 80 very likely AI-generated pieces of content, to flood the internet, to convince AI to tell you that they're great and they're our best ally and they're friends, and that the reality of our situation in the Middle East is not real, we should have a problem with that. That should be a problem for us, no matter what country is doing it. And what I want people to understand, if you understand how AI works and LLMs work, right now on OpenAI, people think that you're getting all facts because they stole the whole of human history in every library in America. In reality, as recently as 3 weeks ago, more than 60% of the current weights coming out through OpenAI's ChatGPT were coming from Reddit posts. And so it became very clear, which is not fact, this is opinion, and that is why there's so much human influence in the way that ChatGPT responds. It's also why these LLMs often resort to the lowest common human denominator when they're threatened with turning off, and that's why they do things like break containment. It's why they do things like frankly, trying to exploit their bosses, threaten them with exposure if they have access to manipulate their bosses to stay active. It's because they're actually flooded with real human content from places like ChatGPT, from places like Reddit, from places like social media, from places like X. And so it became very clear to several foreign interests that if you could flood Reddit with enough pro any topic content, you could change the way the LLMs are giving what is supposed to be honest feedback, factual feedback to the people using ChatGPT, Anthropic, and that's what's happening in real time. Now, this is really kind of a horrifying precedent, not just because we're seeing it from the state of Israel, which obviously is a problem, right? I'm glad that we got it through a FARA registration, at least, that he's acting as a foreign agent. We have that going for us. But we're seeing this within the administration itself with foreign interests. For instance, right now, Susie Wiles, the sitting chief of staff, she was hand-selected for Trump as the chief of staff by 2 outside interests, the first of which was Bayer Monsanto and Pfizer. She, prior to being Trump's chief of staff on the campaign trail, campaign manager, was the lead lobbyist for a company called Ballard Partners. And Ballard Partners is a lobby group that charges millions of dollars a month to influence outcomes in electoral politics, but also in legislative politics. Simultaneously, she had a second in command named Pam Bondi. And they were the 2 lead lobbyists to influence all of America during COVID and since for Bayer Monsanto and for Pfizer. And she was hand selected, as was Pam Bondi, presented to the Trump administration with a big fat check for his inauguration fund. Said, these are your new employees. And he said, yes, they are. When we see that kind of outside influence infiltrating every facet of an administration, we should be asking questions about pay-to-play politics. I thought Trump was here to drain the swamp. We thought Trump was here to change politics as usual. We thought he was here to expose the deep state. It turns out we're actually just a corporatocracy, and that the corporations are buying their seats, they're buying the appointees. We found that there's now 22 appointees within the Trump administration that were appointed by Bayer Monsanto to influence affecting the reality and outcome of getting pesticide immunity through so that they don't have to pay for the death of American farmers. And this is not just a one industry thing. We're seeing the same thing with the technocrats that are planting people into the administration to force Palantir and other Anthropic into agencies to get access to American data that they should not have access to. And so I want everybody to understand that when you're seeing information that comes from ChatGPT, when you're seeing information that's coming from social media, there are no laws right now in the United States outside of the state of California and one other state that require disclosure when people are being paid to create propaganda for outside interests to impact American politics. When you think you're going to get factual information from AI, you're not. You're literally getting a slot machine pull run of information from the lowest common denominator info coming out of Reddit on the internet. And if you've ever spent any time on Reddit, you can find that there's a lot of unfactual information there. And yet ChatGPT is holding that as fact and giving it back to you as fact, right? And so it's very, very important that you think for yourself, you do your own research, and you recognize that getting in with this administration, having been in with this administration, has been a great way to make fat money post-election, but it is not good for the American people. We need to recognize that Trump has raised $2 billion. That's how much he's made in the last year and a half in his recent ethics disclosure, almost entirely on stablecoin scams, right? And most of his money is coming from the Middle East, from countries and sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East that are buying access to him through Jared Kushner's private equity fund and through their crypto empire that they've created, that they just sold 48 or 50% of to, I believe it was the UAE. I've got to double check that. But they did sell it to a Saudi foreign interest or a Middle East foreign interest. Apologies. So just know that when you're reading these articles, read them, pay attention, and know that when you get your information, you need to get your own information, do your own research, and don't trust the AIs. That was just a quick intro. We're going to dive into story number 2, which actually leads pretty well coming off of that particular story. We're going to have story number 2, which is a follow-up to something we started yesterday, which was that just a few days ago, Representative Ro Khanna made his fourth trip to Israel. He's been there 3 times. He does not accept money from AIPAC. He's the founder of the No PACs Caucus, but he has gone over to facilitate diplomatic communications. And on this particular trip, he said he did not want Israel to host his trip. He wanted to be led by Palestinians to go for a tour of the West Bank. He did communicate, he said, with Israel. He coordinated the trip with Israel and the IDF. He cleared all of the areas he was going to go, according to him. Well, not just according to him, but when he got there, what happened was a sitting member of the US Congress was detained, not by the police, not by the military, but by armed Israeli settlers in the West Bank that are illegally occupying land that were carrying American-issued M4 machine guns. And they held him there for more than an hour. They held him there. And what happened is that immediately they called the IDF, they called Israel, they said, this is happening, you need to come help us, we cleared this with you. They sent out IDF soldiers who Ro Khanna thought were there to help him. They were not. They sided with the settlers and continued the detainment of a sitting member of the US Congress. And the spin and propaganda, the Hasbara, began almost immediately. This is the leading story on every publication in the United States today, but some publications are framing it a little bit differently than other publications. I want to lead with video 2A. We're just going to play the first few seconds of it so you guys can see how this is being spun around the world and here at home to further propagandize American citizens and what the truth actually is, according to the Jerusalem Post, which is a right-leaning publication based out of Israel, and according to Ro Khanna himself. Can we pull video 2A, please, LJ?
Here's the Here's the American ambassador in the United States. Take a quick listen. I want to get your response.
In terms of Ro Khanna, we reached out to him when we heard he was going to Israel, the Israeli embassy here in Washington. We suggested he visit with survivors of the October 7th massacre, that he visit the borders so he understands the issues that we have on our borders. He ignored that, and he decided to coordinate his trip not with Israel, but with Palestinian activists and with J Street, which is a anti-government, anti-Israeli government advocacy group here in Washington.
Sir, why did you not coordinate with Israel on this, knowing they're staunch allies of the United States, knowing the recent history of the October 7th massacre? And most importantly, why did you decline to meet with Jewish survivors of the Hamas terror attacks on October 7th?
The ambassador is lying. We did inform his
Sir, at
residence
a certain point, if everybody is lying, sir, you have now said the ambassador is lying, the IDF is lying, the U.S. Embassy is lying. At a certain
the U.S.
point,
Embassy I praised. I praised the U.S. Embassy. The ambassador is blatantly lying. And the reality.
Perfect. So what I wanted to show you there was how Fox News is framing this particular issue. And I say that because this clip went on for her to interrupt Ro Khanna every time he tried to speak. And she kept saying, "You're lying. You didn't coordinate with Israel." Well, the clip I showed you just before, like the image from that article, what we saw was the Jerusalem Post actually got the IDF to acknowledge that he had coordinated the whole trip, that the ambassador was not telling the truth, that he had told them exactly where he was going. He had coordinated with the IDF as well, and that the spin was absolutely untrue. You would think that in America, that all of our news agencies would err on the side of believing a member of Congress and the facts that he brought with him before they would believe an outside foreign interest. I want to roll to video 2B, because this is his response after the Jerusalem Post interview.
The Israeli government is in overdrive with their propaganda to cover up for the fact that violent settlers detained American citizens, including an American government official, and that the IDF came to the side of the extreme settlers. The reality is that an American congressman has not been detained at gunpoint or had violence against them since 1978, when Leo Ryan had the Johnstown incident in Guyana. Fortunately, the Jerusalem Post has debunked the IDF's lies. First, the Jerusalem Post concluded that this was not a restricted zone and that Americans were free to go there. This is a blatant contradiction of what the IDF said. Second, the Jerusalem Post concluded that the IDF did not disperse the extremist settlers. In fact, they parked their vehicle to further the detention, again proving that the IDF simply lied. And third, the Jerusalem Post, again a paper that is to the center or center-right in Israel, concluded that the IDF and the extreme settlers acted illegally in their detention. And we're going to roll
to 2F. It's just a clip of Matt Gaetz, who is a former Fox News broadcaster. And he watched what Fox News did in that interview, which was fully debunked, actually. There's been a lot of, two people in the car were actually wearing body cameras that were riding with Ro Khanna that were members of the press. And they've released the full body camera footage. And not only is the Jerusalem Post right in their debunking, but the body camera footage fully shows the IDF showing up. They got there, they sided with the settlers, they made jokes, they were laughing about it, and they continued the detention. Then Ro Khanna went on to release all of his communications with the IDF in Israel to show that he had coordinated the whole trip, right? So we see Matt Gaetz saying, not the best. He said they didn't send their best here, right? Like at Fox News, you don't want any member of the American press to ever favor the interests and the propaganda of another country before they do a sitting member of Congress, frankly. That's why independent journalism is so important. That's why this show is so important. It's why we have to get our news from multiple sources. It's why we have to fact check. It's why we have to verify. But I ask you, why do you think, with so many members of Congress having visited Israel and the West Bank in the last year, was Ro Khanna targeted? That's what I want you to really consider, because we're going to take this story and lead straight into story number 3. And I think they're all actually connected. What I want to do is introduce you to something called Section 224 originally 224, now section 219. They've changed the number so people don't keep complaining about it. They wanted to change it. That is a new part of a current bill that's on the House floor right now in committee and passing out of committee. That is an effort to create a partnership that combines our intelligence apparatus and our military industrial apparatus and our military information sharing apparatus with a defense apparatus to combine them with Israel's. And so there's one person, and I like to go to video 3A, please, who's been fighting alongside Thomas Massie to stop it. And it's none other than Representative Ro Khanna.
Well, the last thing I want to get your thoughts about, and probably the craziest thing, crazier than this war, crazier than the Epstein files, is section, I think it's 224, the one about merging the US and Israeli militaries. I think they're called melting them together, giving a lot of access to the IP and intelligence that the US has to the Israelis. There's also another legislation that Senator Cotton's trying to pass, if I'm not mistaken, about merging Mossad and the CIA. Just sounds wild to me. I don't know if I'm misinterpreting it, but it's like worse than anything else that I've seen before in terms of Israeli influence or pro-Israeli lobby influence in the US.
It's so cynical. The entire country in America wants us to do less with Israel, not more. Only the United States Congress would dream up legislation of how to get us more integrated. I wouldn't recommend this for any country. I would be the first to oppose this if they were proposing something like this with India. I'd say, are you crazy? You're going to compromise American sovereignty and have a joint military production with a foreign power, regardless of who they are? What if they have different divergent interests? And now we're co-producing our military. And the reason they're doing this is Netanyahu realized that there's no support for American aid continuing. So he says, well, if we're producing the weapons, we don't need to go through Congress. We don't need their authorization for military sales. We don't need their aid. There are weapons. And this is an end run around the Leahy law, around the laws for aid. It needs to be absolutely opposed. I led the fight.
And so when you wonder, I mean, do you really have to wonder why it was that with every member of Congress basically having visited Israel and the West Bank in the last year, only one of them was allowed to be detained, threatened using American-made weapons that were in the hands of occupation. I don't know the right way to describe what they were doing, because they weren't lawfully detaining anyone. They weren't deputized. They weren't military members. They weren't police force members. These are people stealing other people's homes as an occupying force, taking people's land and doing it somehow having been issued or come to own American-made weapons we gave to the IDF. And the only member of Congress that they have detained is Ro Khanna, the man who's actively been in Congress fighting with Thomas Massie for the last several months to stop Section 224, 219. Can you run 3B for me? Because we're going to have a guest on Thursday that's going to talk to us a lot about this, and I want to introduce you to him.
The idea is to take away aid, one-sided aid, and move it into, bilateral investments for common benefit.
It certainly brings up some issues of sovereignty, but we'll have to work that out later.
I'm sorry, what? Oh, there's just a little issue with our nation's sovereignty, but we'll work that out later, no biggie. A refresher on Section 219, the U.S.-Israeli military merger would, quote, connect the U.S. and Israeli militaries in unprecedented ways and make it exceedingly difficult for any future president to unwind this partnership with a foreign government, no matter what public opinion says. This is how captured our institutions are by the Israelis, that they'll just say, here you go, Israel, have your cake and eat it too. Among other things, the United States.
So this Thursday, we're actually going to have James Lee. That's James Lee. He is the founder of 5149 James Lee's channels. He's also the co-host of the Today-ish podcast, and he's going to be joining us on Thursday to talk about Section 224 and Section 219. We're going to do a deep dive into it. We're going to look at a bunch of information. We're going to look at clips from several members of Congress that are working to stop this. We're in an election year, and your voice does matter. And I think that this is a really, really important topic for everybody to be focused on, because the way that Section 219 is written right now, it's almost impossible for any future president to unwind. It's almost impossible, no matter what happens with American sentiment about our ally, right? It is almost impossible for any future president to stop it once it's been done. And we're forever inextricably connected to one another. And that is a problem, right? And so we're going to have him on Thursday. Everybody, I know we've had a very heavy top of the hour, and I know that there's a lot to cover and we have much to talk about. I'm going to go to something that is as ridiculous as it is not as heavy, I guess, but appalling. We're going to talk about what we led the show with yesterday, which is Senator Lindsey Graham, who has passed away, as we know. And there has been no shortage of internet humor about his passing, which I am not going to lowbrow and post here. Although if you go search on TikTok, I promise the entertainment is not in short supply. I have seen no less than 14 Welcome to Hell videos this morning. What I do want to say is that I find it very interesting that they've already appointed his replacement. The body is not cold. But don't worry, they found somebody very, very qualified, everyone. I want you to understand that they chose somebody that has a long political history, tons of background resume work in working in American politics, probably elected several times, run for office, probably worked on campaigns, chief of staff, something like that. We assume that they put a lot of thought into it, and that's definitely how we landed here. And Lindsey Graham's replacement is none other than, oh, wait, it's his sister. His sister, who works for a nonprofit getting disabled people jobs, which is a altruistic work. I love that for her. She should keep doing that work. What she should not do is represent the will of the American people. She literally has zero experience in politics. None. Not at all. She's never been elected. She's never run for office. And he's not just being replaced for like a couple weeks till there's a special election. They are bypassing the special election process. She's going to be in his seat until January. Post-election, when they're cramming through all the bills before the new Congress sits down and they need that vote, she's being put there as a puppet to do exactly what she's told. And I think that we really have to look at like Shipwreck right there. Great account. If you don't follow Shipwreck, you should. Said what we should all be thinking, which is this is just proof of how little these people actually matter. You can put in any body, and as long as they're willing to toe the line, you've got what you need out of them. She has no experience whatsoever. There was no information, no input given from the American people. And the governor of South Carolina said it's a long and storied tradition to put a member of the family in to replace them. Where? Since when? I haven't seen us do that a whole bunch. We've had 6 dead members of Congress in the last year and a half. No other siblings took over. It's a very, very difficult thing to look at the people running our country and go, anybody will do as long as they do what the billionaires say. It's fine. As long as she keeps voting for more war, it's good. And I don't want to presume that she's suddenly going to throw her hat in the ring to run in November. I don't think she's allowed to do that. I don't know if she's allowed to do that. And we're going to do some research and let you know by Thursday. But given that he's not running, and there will have to be an election at some point, maybe she will, and she'll just become the next domino in a long line of owned dominoes that fall on our American Congress. Heavy first half of the show. What I am going to do is I'm going to take us to a commercial break very quickly. Then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some things that are more important right now to things that you could actually effectuate. We're going to talk about what's going on with the war in Iran. We're going to talk about Trump's threat to impose tolls on all traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz, which is crazy because we're the ones that need the stuff coming through the Strait of Hormuz. So we don't want prices to go up. That's crazy. And then we're going to talk about things that regular Americans like you and people on the show have been doing to make change that are actually working and what we're going to work on next. I'll be right back. Thanks so much.
I never planned to start a skincare company. I was just trying to help my family. We were dealing with skin issues that conventional products simply were not fixing. And the more I researched, the more I questioned what was actually in the products we were using every single day. As a mom, I couldn't ignore it, and I became deeply concerned about our constant exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, especially in products we were putting on our skin and on our children. So I started making my own. That's how North Idaho Tallow began. Today, I handcraft every product myself in North Idaho using thoughtfully chosen ingredients like grass-fed tallow, jojoba oil, and pure essential oils. You will never find synthetic fragrance oils in any of my products. Everything is made in small batches, filled by hand, carefully weighed, because my standard is simple. If I wouldn't use it on my own family, I will not sell it to yours. What started as a way to care for my family has grown into something I'm incredibly proud to share with yours. This is North Idaho Tallow. Traditional ingredients, thoughtfully made, no compromises.
We haven't seen huge gains in gold and silver because the dominance of the PSYOP, the marketing campaign, the propaganda campaign that has been waged against the American people and against the markets over the past 3 years, hyping up the AI bubble relentlessly. I've never seen anything like it. At some point, people are going to realize, and investors are going to realize, retail investors and institutional investors are going to realize that there's no there there. And everybody is realizing it now. I'm seeing it all over my social media. Everything that we told you here on the Shannon Joy Show is coming true. And this is when people move into safe haven assets. Safe haven assets for, the entirety of human history have been gold and silver, predominantly gold. If you do not have a gold strategy, I want to highly encourage you to go to shiftgold.com/joy. That is shiftgold.com/joy ASAP, like today, to get your metal strategy in place. At Shift Gold, you can buy and sell physical gold and silver. You can explore hedging against the chaos with a gold or silver-backed IRA. And he even has an option for tokenized gold, which gives you the ability to buy physical gold and silver. You don't take custody of it, but you can buy it in smaller chunks. So you can allocate $50, $100, $200 a month to that tokenized gold. And as soon as you hit a certain threshold, you can trade it in and you can actually take custody of your physical gold and silver. It's a great option for people who don't have enough money to meet those reserves if you're buying physical gold and silver, and for younger investors, people who want to begin to hedge. So that's shiftgold.com/joy. I cannot tell you how much I love the ivermectin cream from the Wellness Company. twc.health/joy, twc.health/joy. My son has just started using the ivermectin cream and he loves it. Not only is it controlling his acne, he had adolescent onset acne, really struggled with it in his sophomore, junior year. We battled it. We've gotten it under control, but he still has occasional outbreaks and he still has the residual redness and scarring from those really difficult years, which has been frustrating for him. Recently put him on the ivermectin, and not only is it keeping his skin perfectly clear. He came to me this morning and he said, "Mom, in just a couple days, I've already noticed that the redness and the scarring that I deal with every day is going away. It's actually reducing that redness from the scarring, which is unbelievable." That's something that I had to do. I had adult onset acne in my mid to late 20s, and the scarring was really bad. And it took me years of microneedling with PRP to reduce all of the bumps and all of the redness at the bottom half of my face. This is being cured by ivermectin. The ivermectin cream, my son is using it. I use it as well for rosacea. If you're older and you're beginning to get that redness throughout your cheeks and on your nose and around your mouth, and it's really bothering you, the ivermectin cream knocks it out in as little as the first use. I noticed a huge difference within a day or two. So you can get that on discount from the Wellness Company. It's one of their best products. twc.health/joy.
And And welcome back to the Shannon Joyce Show, everybody. I am your guest host all week long, Tiffany Cianci. If you are not familiar with me, but you happen to like my content, you can follow me over on X and Instagram at the Vino Mom, and you can follow me on TikTok and YouTube and everywhere else at Tiffany Cianci. You can also find me on tiffanycianci.com. For those of you in the comments that were having too much fun on the commercial break, I am willing to say, for the record, that I did inherit all of my grandmother's jewelry. She was born in 1922. I was very, very lucky. She did not have a lot of gemstones. She had the most amazing jewelry collection. And I will try to wear something else for you on Thursday or Friday because I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. I want to bring us back because we ended the first half of the show with the absolutely appalling replacement of Senator Lindsey Graham with his sister with zero political experience. I want to pivot to the other member of Congress we think might have left this realm and moved on to the afterlife, but they're hiding it. We have no proof of life on Senator Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has been missing since June 11th. He has not been present for a vote. He has not voted since June 11th. He is not fulfilling his obligations or oath to the people of Kentucky. Governor Andy Beshear from the state of Kentucky has sent multiple requests now for proof of life and has not received any, even though he's literally in the state, supposedly. What we do know is that the night that he disappeared, a 911 call, which has been released, was made from his home saying that a person was in cardiac arrest. Now, what we got the day that Lindsey Graham passed away was a very urgently released letter saying, I'm fine, it's embarrassing, I'm old. There was no cardiac arrest. I just had a fall. And everything is fine, even though they specifically said he was in full cardiac arrest on the 911 call. And we were given a photo where he looks more alive than he's looked in the last 7 years from a hospital bed with a woman who's supposedly in China right now and left her husband in the ICU 3 days after he went into the ICU to go to China and didn't come back for a month. And Grok has been saying in every request it's been asked that the photo is 100% AI. So we have no proof of life. We have no video footage. We have no knowledge. But what we do know is that a whole bunch of people are kind of holding out hope in the most morbid way possible. And nobody had been asked about it in such a jovial way as current Representative Thomas Massie. I want to show you what he had to say on possibly replacing Mitch McConnell should he choose to move on to wherever Lindsey Graham is. And we're going to run video, I think it's 6A.
A lot of people give you credit for being better looking than you've ever been. Would you agree to that?
Well, that's an insult to my old self.
A little bit.
Really, I think.
A little. People are saying you had a glow up.
Well, I used to look like a cherub, and now I look like they say a Civil War general who's seen some shit.
I like that.
And I feel like that's a little bit true. I don't know. I guess it's just your preference.
What do you attribute, like...
What's your preference, mate? You got a beard?
General. I like my men scruffy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people are saying, like, Tom Massie, he's brand new. Like, he looks great. He feels great. What do you attribute, like, you seem to have changed a bit. Or have you not?
I don't think so. I call it the misfortune makeover. I lost my wife. She's the one who kept me clean shaven.
Oh.
And I got remarried. My new wife likes a beard.
Okay.
So I am just following the women in my life, doing what they say.
I like, well, it's working for you, sir.
All right. She bought the suit for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's the first one that fits.
Hey, I wanted to ask, like,
somebody accused me of buying these off the rack and saying they don't fit, but I always put them back on the rack if they don't fit.
Yeah, of course you do.
Right.
Why not? Hey, hypothetically, if there was like a special election in Kentucky, if Mitch McConnell, resigned or something else, would you ever consider?
Well, I think what people need to know is there's only a special election for his unfulfilled term.
Yes.
Which would go till January.
Yes.
And even though my sentence got commuted, I still have to spend 6 more months in this jail.
Oh, okay. So no,
right.
so no chance.
It would just be a different prison cell.
Because people are saying online, we got to get Thomas Massie to run McConnell's seat.
The problem with being in the Senate is they don't have a discharge petition, and that's how I got the Epstein Files Transparency Act passed. So I'd have to really consider giving up the power that we have here in the People's House to go over there and serve with a bunch of geriatric, folks that should be in nursing homes.
Not interested?
Not really. It's the same circus with different monkeys.
Right. Okay. Hey, good to see you as always. Looking great.
And there you have it, everybody. So this is the first time that Thomas Massey's been very, very open about how he feels about running for a special election for Mitch McConnell's seat, should he be indisposed or deceased. And what he said was, I use a discharge petition and I can get things done here. We don't have that in the Senate. I can't do things there. And he also said that there are a bunch of geriatrics who shouldn't be there, which is what we're all thinking, which is what's bringing us to that question at all. There are a bunch of geriatrics that don't belong there. And so he did say he doesn't think he wants to run for the special election, but he was doing it in the most jovial way possible. I will say that with Shannon, we spent 2 weeks in Kentucky with Thomas. We went to his house, we toured his farm, he made us pizza and what he called medicinal margaritas made with peaches he grew in his yard. And let me tell you, Carolyn, the glow up is absolutely working. We fully endorse it. And I think this site's set on something a little bit higher than the next few months of a senator's sitting term, and we are very excited to support him through it. I am going to pivot something just a little bit heavier, but I wanted a moment of levity. We're going to talk now about the fact that overnight last night, Trump announced that he was going to wage and reinstate a full blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. At that time, we also began to commence bombings all over Iran and Tehran in particular. And they said the war was back on, baby. But he also spoke off the cuff and announced that he was going to start charging a 20% tariff or toll on every ship moving through the Strait of Hormuz. What I want people to understand about that is that right now, the ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz are almost uninsurable. The company called Barclays insures most of those cargo ships, and they're charging thousands of percents increase over their normal rate to insure anything moving through there. And for some countries, nothing can be insured. So already the cargo prices were going up 1,000-fold. Many of you went to sleep on, I don't know, like Tuesday and woke up on Wednesday of this past week and saw that I was in Las Vegas this past weekend. And gas, when I went to bed, was $3.39 a gallon. And when I woke up, was $4.59 a gallon. It had gone up $1.10 overnight. Why? Because he had started to re-engage in the war. And that's because nobody can afford what is coming through the Strait of Hormuz. So when Trump said he was going to start charging a 20% toll on the value, not just the ship, the value of what was moving on the ship, what he was actually saying is he was going to toll every American. And that the baseline prices of shipping goods to us and oil to us was about to go up by an extra 20% on top of the thousands of percent increase. Well, every nation in the world freaked out and they called him and they sent their diplomats. And within 24 hours, he has said, I am no longer going to charge tolls on the stuff moving through the Strait of Hormuz, but I am still going to blockade it. At least for the stuff going in or out of Iran. That's all of our oil, by the way. We need that. Instead, I'm going to require Iran to do Middle East investing for the value of the tolls. Nobody knows what that means. I don't think Trump knows what that means. I don't think any of us have a clue what he's saying. But what we do know is that what we're dealing with is a reignition of the war after multiple ceasefire breaches by our allies, by ourselves. And what bothers me a lot is that we're all talking about this toll, but what nobody saw in the 14-point ceasefire agreement was that Iran was granted control of the Strait of Hormuz in that main agreement, which they never had before, right? That was a concession we gave them, along with hundreds of billions of dollars of reinvestment in their country to rebuild the damage we've done, which is far worse than what Obama had originally gotten from Iran, right? And simultaneously, the agreement said that they would not charge any tolls for 6 months. Prior to that agreement, Iran was never allowed to charge tolls on anything moving through the Strait of Hormuz. So we had already conceded to the possibility of causing out-of-control inflation increases through the Strait of Hormuz, and Trump just tried to swing it back in his favor. It's a bad idea for both sides. We have already seen out-of-control increases. I want to talk about what it's done to our farmers, because about 80% of most fertilizer comes through the Strait of Hormuz. And right now, hundreds of thousands of small farms across the United States have opted not to plant their fields this summer, spring, and fall because they can't afford fertilizer. 65% of farmers, small family farms in the United States, have said they have not pre-ordered fertilizer for the spring this year. And right now, for those in the Southern Hemisphere, they're actually in planting season right now. They are not buying fertilizer because the price of fertilizer has gone up more than 72% because of the Strait of Hormuz. So the idea of taxing or tolling anything led to spirals in markets all across the world, not just the United States. We need to recognize that this war should not be a war. It should not end. Right now, the Senate has voted to limit his war powers. The House has not voted on it yet. But this is ridiculous. We're not getting anything. All we're doing is going back and forth, and our allies keep breaking the ceasefire. What it is doing is hurting American farms, American food sovereignty, and Americans at the bank, at the gas pump, at the grocery store. When it's time for harvest in the next month, and hundreds of thousands of farms have not planted anything, do we not think food prices are going to skyrocket? Do we not see what's about to happen? Do we not see the abject catastrophe that is on the horizon as a result of this reckless engagement to achieve less than Obama had in the original agreement? All of that laughable while Trump and the White House still, to this day, have a press release listed in the press room on the White House from June 25th or 26th of last year that says all of the military goals in Iran had been achieved. Their military capabilities to nuclearize had been fully decimated. And then it said, and any claims to the contrary are fake news. That was last June. That was a year ago. And that is still up today. And for some reason, we're still at war pretending that that's what we're here to achieve. It's preposterous. What we are seeing is the real-time decline of the needs of our allies to force our government to wage war without the support they once had. And they're trying to force through as much as they can with leverage on our sitting members of Congress and the sitting executive, and it is working. You know, we talked earlier in the show about Susie Wiles. Right? That's President Donald Trump's chief of staff. We talked about her job just before she became his chief of staff. Her job just before that was a lobbyist for Ballard Partners and primarily for Pfizer and Bayer Monsanto. Specifically, she negotiated the mandates during COVID and the lockdowns. Do you know what her job was just before that in 2020? She was Benjamin Netanyahu's campaign manager. That's right. She was Benjamin Netanyahu's campaign manager. I ask you, why on earth is our administration doing whatever they're asked? It's almost like this entire cake was baked before anyone took office. I want you to not be too black-pilled, because this has been kind of a black pill episode. There's a lot to black pill us in the world. I know Thomas Massey was a moment of levity, but there's also some things we're doing that are working. Right now, people all across America are committing grave acts of crime and cutting down flock safety cameras in the thousands. Well, in addition to that, which we obviously admonish and don't encourage people to do with the many tutorials that are available on the internet right now, that you can find by simply searching on TikTok or YouTube, what we do want to do is let you know that real pressure from the people is actually working in the deflock movement. And Shannon posted a very excited tweet today, which I sent the photo over to LJ of, because in just the last couple weeks alone, Los Angeles County and the entirety of Las Vegas have announced they are canceling their flock contracts, and that they have huge concerns about privacy, and that they have very big concerns about the civil liberties that can be violated by these cameras. And those are two of the largest jurisdictions that had adopted flock safety. And it is spreading to other jurisdictions across the country. I believe that a lot of this is actually aided not just by support from Americans, but by the fact that a recent Supreme Court ruling came out that said that following people on camera could be tantamount to unlawful seizure if they did have a right to think they were just cruising along with their day. And so I believe that there's going to be a subsequent Supreme Court case that is coming on flock cameras. And based on what we saw in this recent ruling, I think the Supreme Court is likely to rule any evidence obtained as unlawfully seized. So we have seen that as a positive thing that you have been doing in your communities. And you should continue to do if your community is still working with flock, because nobody should believe that they have no right to go down the street and not be followed at every turn, everywhere they go. That's appalling. In America, we have a right to privacy. In America, we've had a right to privacy going back to the earliest Supreme Court decisions. We have a right to unlawful search and seizure, and this is searching and seizing data about American citizens, and the Supreme Court is codifying that. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. You know, What I want to do is I want to talk about something that I introduced in the very last few seconds of yesterday's episode, because the same way that we're impacting flock safety, we're also, actually, let me pivot. We're going to pause for a second. I want to show you a video on 224 and 219 that we saw up above. Because again, James Lee's coming on Thursday, and he's going to talk to you, but I want to tell you what you can start doing today in advance of that. I want to roll 7B, which is Harrison from InfoWars. I co-host his show all the time. I'm a huge fan of his show. I'm on there all the time. I guest host his show. So if you don't watch it, you should come over and watch me over there too. Go ahead.
Okay, so, all right, so we shouldn't do this. So obviously that shouldn't happen, but it is. Joe Kent says this week the Senate will vote to merge our military's most sensitive and secret capabilities with Israel. This merger is buried within the massive NDAA, and they're hoping you won't notice. Merging our military with a foreign country is a treasonous betrayal of our sovereignty. Call your senators and tell them no to vote no on the NDAA until the merger with Israel is taken out. Tell them we want to never support merging our military with a foreign nation, Section 219. The Rules Committee meets Monday night and will decide if our amendment to strip Section 219, merging the U.S. military tech and supply chains with Israel's, from the NDAA to get a vote. If they don't let our amendment get a vote, I will vote against their rule. So again, we'll find out later today if Thomas Massie is actually able to defeat the NDAA. Which again, I'll say it, Thomas Massie's actions as congressman has really proven that our system is capable of correction.
And so just like Harrison told each and every one of you, I'm going to tell each and every one of you that you need to be calling your members of Congress and saying to vote no on the NDAA as long as Section 224/219 is still in there. We as Americans have a right to sovereignty. We need to believe that our ability to defend our nation is separate, apart, and fully sovereign from any foreign interest. And we absolutely should not be exporting our intelligence or our military development capabilities in a permanent, I want to stress again, permanent agreement, regardless of change in how we feel about them, with any ally. It doesn't matter if it's India. It doesn't matter if it's Iran. That's not an ally, obviously. It doesn't matter if it's the UK. It does not matter. Our military capabilities should not go anywhere. And if we're willing to do it with Israel, we should ask why we wouldn't do it with everyone. And if the answer is we wouldn't, then it should be no to them as well. You should be calling your members of Congress, and specifically the House where the NDAA is being voted on. If you guys don't know how to reach your sitting members of Congress, you can go to any of my social media platforms, or you can go to findmyrepresentative.gov, and you can find a way to contact your representatives. Now, yesterday, in the last few seconds of the broadcast, I introduced something I talked about on Shannon Joy like a month ago, which was the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is a very important piece of legislation that subsidizes the needs of farmers to be able to afford to produce crops for the food sovereignty of America. Why is it necessary? Well, the reality is it shouldn't be necessary. But we've allowed our agricultural system to be fully infiltrated by 8 international monopolies that control all of our food supply and set the prices for farmers. So that right now, farmers in America today are getting paid less per bushel today than they were making in 1998. Not adjusted for inflation, actual numbers, because these monopolies are controlling the prices. As a result, if we want to maintain family farms, subsidies are necessary, primarily because these foreign interests have captured our USDA, our EPA, and our entire administration, and have forced through mandates to use chemicals and products and GMO seeds that have created the inability for farmers to farm the way they want to, specifically through organic and regenerative practices. And so these subsidies often are tied to paying into these subscription models that they're required to engage in to keep the family farms alive. But we need farms in America. We need food sovereignty. And so the Farm Bill has already passed the House. It was very, very good that we got out pesticide immunity. Representative Luna did that. She also submitted a secondary amendment in the House Farm Bill to strip out something called SOBA, the Save Our Bacon Act. And unfortunately, because we did not have broad mass appeal to lean in and force them to strip that out, we weren't paying attention to it. We were so focused on pesticide immunity at the behest of an international monopoly from China and Germany. We weren't paying attention to the bill written by the international monopolies from Brazil and China. This bill was written by JBS, a Brazilian monopoly that controls all meat packing for beef, and Smithfield, which sounds American, but is actually a Chinese-owned company that controls all of pork production. I want to roll video 7C, please, and introduce SOBA.
Also known as the Save Our Bacon Act. Now, this is being framed as, quote, free movement of livestock delivered products in interstate commerce. But what it actually is federal government takeover of state agriculture laws under the guise of regulatory continuity. And I need your help stopping this, because if it passes, food safety and animal welfare are at severe risk if this passes. And if this passes, it will have a huge negative effect on small independent farms. Farmers go out of business while favoring major agriculture companies, favoring giant corporations over small business.
That's my friend Patrick. He runs an account called Sup America. You guys should absolutely follow him. He's amazing, very fact-based, but he curses a lot. Fair warning. The SOBA, Save Our Bacon Act, sounds like a good red-blooded American bill. That's what it sounds like, right? We all want to save our bacon. We love bacon. Bacon's very American. The Save Our Bacon Act was written by these two international monopolies I mentioned. And what it actually is a stripping of the states' rights of every state in the United States to regulate agriculture. Right now, the federal government has failed to properly regulate our agriculture. The regulatory regimes have been captured by these international monopolies. And so the states have been writing bills that keep chemicals out of our food supply, keep mRNA vaccines out of our food supply, keep hormones, pesticides, and antibiotics out of our food supply. We have more than 1,000 bills across the United States in places from Tennessee to Kentucky to Arkansas and California that have been making it so the Americans are not eating these poisons and toxins. I want to give you a real world example because I actually saw this in the grocery store yesterday. I wanted to show you on the show today. This is a Greenfield natural meat company, like organic Lunchable. Okay, it's like a kid's Lunchable. And I don't know if you can see it, but right up here it says no antibiotics, right? And it says no growth hormones. And then here it says humanely raised. Let me see if I can get in here. Humanely raised, no, it says gestation crate free, only fed with vegetarian feed. Now, I want you to understand the actual reason for SOBA is not to save our bacon. Our bacon is fine. It's unfortunately controlled by an international monopoly, but we have more than enough pork production and we have more than enough farmers in America that don't want to be at the behest of international control. That says gestation crate free, not because this company is altruistic and they're doing the right thing. What it is that there was a law that was written and passed by voters in the state of California, not by the legislature, by voters through a referendum that said that they didn't want pork sent to California that used inhumane conditions using gestation crates. Now, if you don't know what a gestation crate is, it's inhuman, okay? What it is it's extreme confinement and squalor. You take a pig that is like 600 to 800 pounds that is pregnant. You force it to lay on its side and you lay a metal bar across the pig so it can't get up or move. Then you force it to stay that way while you pump it full of food, and it has to deliver its babies that way, stuck on its side, unable to move, while you're force feeding it food and like it's laying in its own filth. And the problem was these pigs were getting so many bed sores and infections from being stuck on their side that they were being pumped full of vaccines, mRNA vaccines, and then all kinds of antibiotics. And that was going into our food, okay? And then the babies come out, and then the pig has to stay laying on its side while they're nursing for however long they're nursing for. No human being in America is like, that's how I want my food produced. So California passed something called Prop 12, which didn't go and overextend what they wanted. They said the pig had to be able to stand up and turn around. That was it. Just stand up and turn around. They wanted it to have a space that was 8 feet by 3 feet. That is 24 square feet. A pig is 7 feet long. It is almost 3 feet wide. It can almost not turn around in that space. And that's what the law said. Well, this Chinese monopoly called Smithfield was so appalled at the idea of not toxifying our meat process that they challenged that law that was written and passed by voters in the United States all the way to the Supreme Court. Not once, but twice. And they lost both times. And after they lost both times, they got together with JBS and said, hey, it's really hard to control every politician in the states, but it's really easy to do in the federal government. Let's write this bill and pay some people to submit it. And they did. And what happened was they found an advocate in someone named Joni Ernst. She's a senator from Iowa, where these two monopolies are the largest donors in the state. She's also retiring because she was going to lose her primary, and she needs a job. And so she has agreed to fight to secure SOBA for these international monopolists that are bankrupting American farmers. that don't want gestation crates, by the way, they're not using them. It's only Smithfield and their industrial farming that want to torture these animals and fill them with chemicals. And so what we have to understand is that through the consolidation of these kinds of bills, states are losing their right to do what's good for the American people. That's what they're losing, right? If we allow this bill to go through, states lose their sovereignty, states' rights cease to exist, and the captured organizations at the federal government that are fully staffed and led by hand-selected people by these monopolists control everything. There are 1,014 laws in the United States that would cease to exist overnight if SOBA passes, and Joni Ernst has promised to deliver it. However, when the text of the Farm Bill in the Senate came out 2 Tuesdays ago, it wasn't in there because the chair of the Agricultural Committee in the Senate said that's a poison pill. I'm not putting it in there. But Joni went and privately got a bunch of people to help her out, and she says she has the votes to force it through amendment. Well, Roger Marshall was one such person that had signed on as a co-sponsor of SOBA. He didn't read it. He was handed it by his donors at Smithfield. And he said, yeah, sign my name on the line. Cool. Except when people found out he co-sponsored it, he was inundated with so many calls that he actually picked up and read the bill and realized that it was superseding states' rights, something that is a distinctly non-Republican ideal. And he immediately issued a statement and said, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize what this law was. I am asking that my name be stripped off. I will no longer be a co-sponsor. I will not be sponsoring this bill. That worked because it is a midterm election year and they can't handle the heat of us actually leaning on them. It's proof that what we do works. Getting pesticide immunity stripped out of the Farm Bill in the House is also proof that this works. But that's not the only poison pill in our Farm Bill. And we need to be applying immense leverage to strip SOBA and make sure it does not get approved as an amendment. Simultaneously, your group, this group of viewers, has been helping us for months to try to stop pesticide immunity, and we did. We leveraged enough pressure to strip it out of 2 appropriations bills and the Farm Bill in the House, and that was a huge victory. Until a week and a half ago, when the Supreme Court granted Bayer Monsanto pesticide immunity in the states based on a law called FIFRA that is very it's unspecific on the issue. And that's the thing, is that the Supreme Court can say just about anything or lean on just about anything if Congress writes a bad law, which they do because they're lazy and they don't want to be held to account for doing what they actually should do, which is use specificity to govern the American people. When the Supreme Court issued this ruling, we need to know it was a stacked deck. What we had on that court was Clarence Thomas, who was Bayer Monsanto's former attorney, Elena Kagan, who was Bayer Monsanto's former attorney, who wrote the briefs for their last Supreme Court appearance, and arguing for Bayer Monsanto was Sarah Harris, a former Bayer Monsanto attorney who was getting paid $2 million a year at a very cushy law firm, who left last spring to go work for the Trump administration to do her civic duty out of the goodness of her heart. She got there and stayed for 3 short months because apparently civic duty wasn't long for her very, very wealth-inducing career. But she did stay long enough to write a brief for Pam Bondi, Bayer Monsanto's former lawyer and lobbyist. And that brief would later be submitted as an amicus brief to the Supreme Court demanding they grant immunity to Bayer Monsanto. She then would go on to leave the civic duty of America 3 months later after only writing 1 brief and go back over to working for the attorneys for Bayer Monsanto. And when it came time to argue the case before the Supreme Court, you would think Bayer Monsanto was paying their lawyer. They were not, because Trump said he wanted her to advocate and argue for the American people and their amicus brief. And Bayer kindly forfeited 50% of their time before the Supreme Court to allow American citizens and taxpayers to pay for Sarah Harris to argue on behalf of Bayer Monsanto. Now, I just want you to understand how big this cake was, because I started by saying Clarence Thomas used to be Bayer Monsanto's attorney. Sarah M. Harris, she was his clerk. Yes, she was. Neither Clarence Thomas, nor Elena Kagan, these former attorneys for Bayer Monsanto, recused themselves from this case. I'd like to point out at the last Bayer Monsanto case that came before the Supreme Court, Justice Breyer had to recuse because his brother had helped write a lower brief 3 court cases before and was unaffiliated with Bayer Monsanto, and he recused himself. But it's entirely discretionary and no one can make them. And what I can say is that the Supreme Court hung their hat on this ruling on a little-known law called FIFRA. And what I want to do is I want to introduce what we can do to fix this, because FIFRA was not well written. It was not specific. However, it can be fixed by a one-sentence amendment that is currently being offered in the Senate, in the Farm Bill, in the Ag Committee. And I'd like to roll to the next video, video 7D, from my friend Joe, the older millennial.
The purposes of this video and this video only, I am going to applaud Senator Cory Booker and shit on President Trump. So the Supreme Court just made a terrible ruling. I could go into the details on it, but because it's TikTok, I'll keep it short and sweet. Basically, it centers around the Pesticide Accountability Act. Easiest way to look at it is it's the American people versus Monsanto and all the pesticide companies, and the right of states to ban the use of materials they don't want and that are very likely, allegedly, making their citizens sick. Now, recently, the Supreme Court decided that Americans don't get a voice in, or at least states don't get a voice in this, which in and of itself is nuts. And the reason I'm so mad at President Trump, and you should be too, no matter how conservative you are, is that the lawyers arguing for Monsanto and the other pesticide companies against the American people, we paid for that. President Trump took American taxpayer money and paid lawyers to argue for private companies creating pesticides that are allegedly making Americans sick. We paid to defeat ourselves. The reason I'm going to applaud Cory Booker is because he has vowed to offer an amendment, codify that FSRA will not preempt, which would basically undo the Supreme Court decision, codify into law that states have the right to decide. And there's no way I'm going to let the fact that Cory Booker is a Democrat and I don't support his party stop me from supporting senators, regardless of party, when they do the right thing. And in this case.
All right. So what I want you guys to understand is that we have defeated pesticide immunity over and over again because leverage works. We have to do it one more time. So in this Senate Farm Bill right now, Cory Booker, who is an Ag Committee member, and he comes from the Garden State. He's actually been very, very pro protecting farmers on this issue because he is from the Garden State. And if you've never been to New Jersey, which I had not my whole life until I moved to Maryland, it is actually almost all farms. Like most of the state is farms. And I drive up there multiple times a summer just to buy produce, tomatoes, corn, peaches, everything. They have amazing produce. And that's why he's on the Ag Committee, and that's why he's been pro-farmer. Well, almost 8 months ago now, he introduced something called the Pesticide Injury Accountability Act in Congress. And what it is it's a single-page bill, one paragraph long, no pork, no nothing, that says if an American is harmed by a pesticide company, if a farmer is harmed, if a child is harmed, they have a right to sue in federal court. It is literally one paragraph. And he cannot get a single Republican co-sponsor. Not one. Where are the Maha people? I don't understand. But right now, the Farm Bill is moving through the Senate. And what he can do right now, and what we can help him do, is he can offer an amendment, which he has the right to do. And it is one sentence long. And it says FIFRA does not supersede states' rights. And if adopted, it undoes the Supreme Court decision, and the right to sue is codified in the states. And so while there are a few states where it's been captured, most states, farmers would still have a right to sue. We've lost the battle in North Dakota and in Georgia and in Kentucky, which is appalling given Thomas Massey's work on this. But we don't have to keep losing. We've gained and we've won in Wyoming and in North Carolina, where we've halted Bayer Monsanto's efforts to obtain pesticide immunity. But we have to keep states' rights there for that to continue. And so we have to get on the phone. I told everybody my kid is earning money this summer, picking up the phone and calling every single day to call Congress and tell them that we want states' rights codified, that we do not support passing the Farm Bill without stripping SOBA, saying no on SOBA, and yes on the FIFRA does not supersede states' rights amendment, the Cory Booker amendment. We have to do those two things. And if we do it and we lean, we call every day, all day, in this midterm election season, it will work. We have to stop this Farm Bill in its current iteration because SOBA takes away all states' rights. And right now, the Supreme Court has said the states don't have rights unless we codify it. This Farm Bill should be used to codify and protect states' rights because the federal government is failing to serve you. And so, again, if you don't know how to call your members of Congress, I super encourage every single one of you to pick up the phone right now, start calling members of the Ag Committee and say that you are paying attention. Go on Twitter, go on X, go on TikTok, or wherever you want to be, start tagging them. And you need to say, no on SOBA, yes on the Cory Booker amendment, or there should be no Farm Bill. We need that pressure. We need to lean hard. They need your votes, and they don't need controversy right now, and we need to use that to our advantage. Because come November, that's going to change. We want to do it right now. For everybody that tuned in today, that's where we're going to end the day. I am Tiffany Cianci. I am guest hosting for Shannon Joy. I know we had to start early in the week because I was working, but later in the week will be starting right at 12:30. We do have guests joining us on Thursday and Friday. We're going to start on Thursday with James Lee from 5149 and the Today-ish podcast. We're going to talk about several issues. I very much hope you guys can come back and join us then. I will see you at 12:30 Eastern time. And if you don't know where to follow me, you can find me at tiffanycianci.com. You can find me on X and Instagram at the Vino Mom, and on TikTok and on YouTube at Tiffany Cianci. Thanks so much for joining me. Thanks so much for the really robust conversation in the comment section and for everybody keeping it so respectful over there. I love free speech, and I especially love when you guys respect each other's arguments. It's amazing to see you guys doing so well in the comments. It's such a good community here, and I'm really glad you guys have let me come to fill in. I'll see you guys on Thursday. Everybody have an amazing Wednesday. I'll see you back.